Every day, untold numbers of mutants are born across the globe. This for some is cause for great excitement and celebration as the next step in human evolution confidently begins to emerge from relative obscurity. For others, the arrival of Homo superior is a frightening reality and a cause for great alarm. Certainly some argue in the wrong hands these powers could be used to devastating effect. It's clear that no matter how many times the X-Men save the world, mutant kind will always face far more than their fair share of loathing and revulsion from the general population. But regardless, there is one thing about which there can be no argument. Earth-shattering, mind-bending, universe-altering powers can be inherited by those born with the X gene. Today here at Plot Armor Comics, we're going to be counting down the top 10 most powerful mutants in Marvel history. These mutants represent the epitome of the potential power their species can exercise. And though they all share an origin, as we'll soon see, the outlooks and power sets between these 10 mutants could not be more different. Number 10. Hope Summers. First on our list is none other than the most consequential and widely hailed mutants of her time. Buckle up, folks, we're starting off strong. For a brief moment in mutant history, the hopes and dreams of the entire species rested soundly on Hope Summers' shoulders. Her actions during this period earned her the impressive title of Mutant Messiah, a nickname that soundly stuck. One of the cleverest, most determined, and highly impassioned leaders that mutant kind has ever seen, Hope's power set is completely unique. As such, it took a long time for her abilities to be fully understood and appreciated. Hope's power is essentially a catch-all in terms of mutant abilities. Hope can mimic and channel the powers of nearby mutants to an absurdly impressive and powerful degree. Early on in her young life, Hope exhibits immense potential when she is able to completely halt a bullet fired by Bishop, acting without training and completely on instinct. But this minor exhibition of her power would be small potatoes compared to what Hope was destined to become. From the moment she was born, representing the first mutant birth since the near extermination of the species, something we'll get into later on, all eyes were on Hope Summers. Though her moment of triumph would come much later, at the apex of one of the most important moments in Marvel canon. Her moment in the proverbial sun came at the height of the war between the X-Men and the Avengers when the splintered Phoenix Force finally reforged itself and latched onto Hope as its vessel. In that moment, her every pore overflowing with unimaginable kinetic and psychic energy, the world stood still, unsure of what Hope would choose to do with such power at her fingertips. But with the help of the Scarlet Witch, who snagged her own spot a little further down on this list, Hope was able to not only dissipate the intensely destructive power of the Phoenix, but literally resurrect mutant kind by revitalizing their numbers, bringing back into being hundreds of mutants who lost their powers during the disastrous events of House of M through sheer force of will. More recently, Hope has been able to hone her abilities to perform awesome feats previously deemed unimaginable. Living on the island of Krakoa, Hope has been using her powers as a part of a streamlined process that can literally bring fallen mutants back from the dead. In an elaborate process described as delicate, almost impossible work, Hope has been leading a small team of 4 other mutants, each with precisely the abilities necessary to create new life. As Magneto once explained, "The truth is that on their own, each one of these mutants would be incapable of the intricate dance necessary to pull off these Promethean feats, but Hope is the great unifier. Her powers enable theirs to operate at both their peak and in unison." This shows us that Hope's abilities have progressed past the point of simply mimicking her fellow mutants' abilities. Now, Hope is able to reach out to those around her, enhancing and sharpening their own experience and usage of their powers as well. Given time, who knows how powerful could become as she ages and matures. So far, it seems that there may be no upper limit to her power set, though only time will tell. Number 9. Proteus. Proteus might not be one of the most famous mutants of all time, but make no mistake, dear viewer, this is one of the most dangerous members of Homo superior ever to roam the Earth. One reason he stays out of the limelight is that one of Proteus's abilities makes the young man nigh undetectable to the naked eye. But despite his relative public anonymity, Kevin McTaggart's reality and energy-based power set make him undoubtedly one of the most powerful mutants of all time. In stark contrast to Hope Summers, though, Proteus doesn't amplify those around him, he feeds on them. The firstborn son of longtime X-Men ally Moira McTaggart, his mother best described Proteus's peculiar power set to the combined X-Force and New Warriors teams. "My son was born an energy vampire of sorts. He lived his life in isolation as a guinea pig as I try to find a way to cure him. Angry and bitter, he escaped, possessing one body after another, his enormous energies burning them all out. Indeed, when Kevin McTaggart's mutant's abilities manifested in adolescence, they transformed the boy into a being of pure energy. Now, Proteus is forced to possess the bodies of unfortunate passerbys in order to sustain himself and exist physically alongside humanity. Horrifically, unlike some mutants with the powers of possession, the sheer magnitude of Proteus's energy form will absorb and destroy anybody he takes control of in short order. But Proteus's powers of bewitchment are only the tip of the proverbial iceberg for this particular mutant. Proteus's real power lies in his reality-warping secondary mutation. When the X-Men first came into contact with Moira's troubled son, the boy had only just escaped the cell in which he had been kept for his entire life. When the X-members Wolverine and Nightcrawler first encountered Proteus in the body of a police officer, it was clear from the start that the two were woefully outmatched. However, by sheer luck, it happened that Proteus was unable to possess Wolverine's adamantium-enforced body because of his inherent weakness to metal. When Proteus begins to feel threatened, he lets rip his awesome reality-warping powers in a show of strength neither of the X-Men had ever seen before. Imagine a world where no rules exist. The description of Proteus's powers goes, where there is no natural order, where nothing is the same from one moment to the next. In the span of an instant, Nightcrawler and Wolverine go from staring down a rather average-looking cop to finding themselves floating through a cold, endless void where all laws of nature and physics are rent asunder. Helpless and reeling, somehow existing without form nor structure, the two heroes are only saved when Storm arrives and Proteus's attention shifts, though even the mutant goddess of the wind soon needs saving herself after earning Proteus's full attention. It seems that no matter how formidable the fighters are, whoever controls the board controls the game, and Proteus holds the strings to our entire plane of existence. Though despite his more sinister leanings, it should be noted that more recently, Proteus has turned over a new leaf, offering his powers under Hope Summer's leadership to assist in the cycle of mutant reincarnation that has so buoyed Homo Superior's standing on the world stage in recent years. And considering all the beatings that Proteus has handed the X-Men in the past, suffice to say that the mutants are much happier having Kevin McTaggart on their side than against him. But before we see who's next on our countdown of consequential mutants, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. And get ready, dear viewers, because we haven't seen anything yet. Number 8. Exodus. Meet the man who single-handedly brought Professor X back to life, but that's only one facet of the mutant known as Exodus's abilities. With a staggering range of power that gives him everything from teleportation to telekinesis, you can think of Exodus as a Homo Superior Swiss Army knife. It's not one specific power that makes him such a force of nature, it's all of them combined. When going up against X-Force during his first appearance, the team was utterly dismantled by Exodus's telekinetic abilities. He laid waste to two entire squads of super-powered mutants without so much as a second glance. This was entirely on the heels of just one of the mutant's many abilities as well, another of which he showcases at the end of the fight where he teleports himself and the entire New Mutants team away in a giant psionic tornado. In most of his appearances, Exodus is depicted as an extremely driven sycophant who serves his master Magneto with a zealous passion that threatens to consume him. Once in a desperate power grab, Exodus was able to bring the combined forces of the X-Men and the Avengers to their knees. This display of power exhibited nearly all of Exodus's powers being used in tandem. A terrifying feat never before seen from the mutant. All at once, Exodus was able to maintain his own psychic shields, stay out of reach of the heroes with his power of flight, encase certain mutants inside of impenetrable force fields, psychically enrage the surrounding population to attack one another, as well as dole out immensely potent psychic attacks of his own at the two super teams simultaneously. I mean, talk about multitasking. If it hadn't been for an extremely lucky 1-2 punch from Charles Xavier and the Black Knight, Exodus would have almost certainly won the day single-handedly. This made it all the more poignant when years later, after Professor X was shot in the head by Bishop, Exodus saved Charles by literally rebuilding his brain. After Charles awoke, the two entered one of the most intense psionic battles the world has ever seen, with Charles just barely triumphing over Exodus. Though even in the throes of a heavyweight psychic combat, Exodus was still able to defend his physical form against a surprise attack from Magneto. There is a terrifying matter-of-factness to Exodus's abilities that makes the man one of the most formidable mutants in existence, and at the height of his power, perhaps even entirely unbeatable. Number 7. Apocalypse. The first thing to know about En-Sabah-Nur is that he's immortal, like born thousands of years ago immortal. In fact, Apocalypse likely represents one of the most durable and tenacious mutants ever to exist, and that's only scratching the surface of this terrifying force of nature's mutant abilities. For one, Apocalypse's very blood contains the power to heal mutants. This ability was only revealed out of necessity, however, when Chamber of the X-Men was violently wounded beyond repair. His life was eventually saved only by the merciful actions of En-Sabah-Nur, who brought him to his abode and allowed the blood of Apocalypse to not only heal the young mutant's body, but reactivate Chamber's lost powers as well. This moment additionally brings up the question of whether or not Apocalypse's blood heals him even while flowing through his veins, which would make him near unkillable while his heart is still beating. Of course, Apocalypse's signature power is his complete molecular control of his entire physical form, an immensely adaptable power never seen in all of mutant history.
"For I control my body,"
Apocalypse once announced,
"rearrange and restructure its molecules as it suits me."
Not only is this ability crucial to Apocalypse's longevity, but it allows him to coordinate both offense and defense on the battlefield simply by willing his body into different densities and forms. While concentrating on this ability, En-Sabah is nearly indestructible and has been known to fend off entire teams of X-Men at once without so much as breaking a sweat. During one such encounter, while watching Apocalypse swat away his soldiers with ease, Cyclops notes, "Inhumans and X-Factor, we're all hitting him with everything we've got, powers and weapons, without having the slightest effect." And yet in every previous encounter when he was more our size, Apocalypse was the consummate shape changer, manifesting any martial ability necessary to tip the balance in his favor. Now though, he's using a blunderbuss approach, abandoning his past finesse to blast us with massive beams of energy. This description of how it feels to battle against En-Sabah-Nur is excellent in its precision, but it's Cyclops' next thought that sends chills down the man's spine. It could be his way of demonstrating his unmatchable supremacy. Scott Summers thinks as he watches two of the most powerful super teams on the planet get beaten back without a second thought. Already, Apocalypse's mutant abilities present near infinite range of possibilities both in and out of combat. But what really takes Apocalypse to the next level is the dangerous and volatile experimentation he's put himself through, taking him from one of the most powerful mutants of his time to one of the most powerful of all time. Using a wide variety of celestial and earthly technology, Apocalypse has been able to boost and enhance his own abilities, effectively leveling up his mutant abilities time and again to become both an immovable object and an unstoppable force simultaneously. Number 6. Legion. Legion is perhaps one of the most infamous and terrifying mutants on our list, but decidedly not because he's a villain at heart, but rather simply because he's one of the most unimaginably powerful people in the universe. If Legion were to reliably unlock his full potential, he would instantly and undeniably shoot up to one of the very top spots on this list. But as it stands, because of mental and psychological illness and trauma, Legion is effectively locked out of the vast majority of his raw power. When understanding just how powerful Legion can be, it's important to mention that he is the son of Charles Xavier, the world's most powerful psychic mind. But as powerful as the famed Professor X is, his firstborn child is infinitely more so. As a child, David Charles Haller was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, more commonly known as multiple personality disorder. This diagnosis means that the mind of the most powerful mutant ever born is split into many pieces. And importantly, along with his mind, Legion's powers were split between his multiple personalities as well. To go through each and every one of Legion's personalities here would quite simply take hours, but instead of giving you a glimpse into a fraction of Legion's power, let's take a look at some of the few times David Haller has been lucid enough to achieve his full potential and wield his omnipotence without guardrails. One such time came during an invasion of the Elder Gods, at which point the X-Men realized they were woefully out of their depth. But Ilyana Rasputin, otherwise known as Magic, had a secret weapon up her sleeve. Convincing Legion's ultimate personality to come to her aid, she unleashed the otherworldly power of the God Mutant. With Legion's release, he emerged onto the battlefield bathed in glorious blue light. With a mere thought, an instantaneous whisper of a notion, Legion simply caused the Elder Gods to cease, to end, to be no longer. And that was that. No long, arduous battle between good and evil, no casualties, no fuss, just a mutant with a power of a god willing his enemies out of existence. This is the awesome power of the Legion. Should he ever overcome his dissociative identity disorder and coalesce all of his power into one sustainable personality, it's not so much that David would be unstoppable as David would no longer be bound by the concept of obstruction, of difficulty. There would quite simply be nothing in the universe powerful enough to rein him in, even slightly. But interestingly, when Legion once again reached the pinnacle of his potential, he decided to use his godhood to remove himself from existence, positing, "I was too bloody good for this place anyway," before slicing himself off from the rest of reality. Obviously, Legion's potential represents one of the most immensely potent power sets in the entire universe, not just mutant kind. But because his abilities are functionally stifled by his dissociative difficulties and mental trauma, Legion will remain towards the middle of this list, clearing the top 5 spots for mutants who have fully realized their power sets, acting out their full capacities each and every day of their lives. Number 5. QUENTIN QUIRE. QUENTIN QUIRE, or Kid Omega as he's commonly known, is one of the most unconventional additions to our list. And yet, for all of his teenage angst and apathetic aloofness, in many ways QUENTIN represents the future of mutant kind. QUENTIN QUIRE is destined to become none other than one of the most powerful and indomitable psychics the universe has ever seen. But as those who know QUIRE will tell you, he still has a long way to go before that day comes. Unlike other legendary telepaths like Charles Xavier himself or Jean Grey, whose own spot on this list is coming up soon enough, QUENTIN's psychic powers have manifested slightly differently. When QUENTIN first enrolled in Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Professor X noted that his telepathic talents are deep and subtle. He's able to influence minds around him. Emma Frost, a psychic heavyweight in her own right, offered her own observation during QUIRE's first days of school, noting, "Our young Mr. QUIRE thinks 10 million brilliant thoughts per second, Charles." Both Xavier and Frost saw potential in QUIRE beyond what the young teen saw in himself. But as QUIRE grew as a mutant and a man, his telepathic abilities would manifest in increasingly powerful and impressive ways. Notably, QUENTIN's subtle and malleable latent telepathic abilities make it easy for him to duplicate the signature styles of other psychics. For example, QUENTIN has been observed conjuring himself a psychic shotgun in the same way Psylocke uses her telepathic abilities to materialize her iconic sword. QUIRE has also developed a knack for imprisoning people inside of their own heads, a favorite technique of one of his professors, Emma Frost. But what really sets QUENTIN apart from other psychics of his time is not what he has done, but what he will do. Eventually, we know QUENTIN QUIRE will not only inherit the Phoenix Force, he will master it, being one of the only precious few mutants ever to truly earn the codename of Phoenix. Though many other mutants, specifically telepaths, over the years have come into contact with the Phoenix, no other will wield it with the mastery and nuance of the future Kid Omega. Don't worry, we'll get into exactly what the Phoenix Force is shortly. But for QUENTIN, this means that he will become one of the most awe-inspiring mutants that the universe has ever seen. QUENTIN QUIRE may have started as a punky, angst-ridden troublemaker, but one day he will grow into one of the most powerful mutant heroes in history. But don't take our word for it, take the word of one of mutant kind's most beloved champions. Because when QUENTIN QUIRE graduated from the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning, Headmaster Wolverine himself asked none other than Captain America to be there as QUENTIN's witness. Number 4. Onslaught. As per usual, the Watcher said it best when he described the terrifying mutant entity Onslaught as
born of an unholy alchemy, spawned when Professor Charles Xavier, leader of the X-Men, foolishly used his mental powers to cleanse the mind of the corrupt mutant Magneto. Onslaught, the synthesis of all the darkness with the souls of both men, lurked within Xavier for months, building his power and biding his time.
This is Onslaught, a malformed amalgamation of hatred, fear, and violence within the hearts of two of mutant kind's most consequential figures. In the mid to late 90s, when Onslaught single-handedly brought the Marvel Universe to its knees, the terrifying beast seemed to be the most dangerous and brutal threat the planet had ever faced. The combined force of X-Men, Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and everyone else we could find assembled to see the creature put away, but that feat proved far easier said than done in the end. Originally, Onslaught had the combined powers of two Class 5 mutants, Eric Lensher and Charles Xavier. Already, these two power sets combined are terrifying to imagine, but Onslaught certainly didn't stop there. In order to really juice up his power levels, Onslaught kidnapped not only Nate Gray or X-Man, the immensely powerful mutant psychic, but Franklin Richards as well, who we'll be diving into a little further down this list. With these four mutant power sets at his disposal, Onslaught was just about the most powerful single foe the Marvel Universe has ever come up against. To prove his supremacy, when the combined heroes of the planet attacked, Onslaught literally created a second sun in the sky in order to assist him in wiping out the Earth's population. When Reed Richards himself balked at the raw power needed to wish a celestial body into existence, Sue Storm set him straight. Nothing's impossible to Onslaught. Not even when he has the power of X-Men and the imagination of our sun at his command. Eventually, in a desperation play of planetary proportions, the Hulk turned to Jean Grey and asked her to telepathically suppress his Banner personality, unleashing the hellish beast beneath. She did as he requested, and the full unshackled force of the Incredible Hulk was set free. Only by releasing the Hulk at his angriest did the heroes even manage to crack Onslaught's armor, though Onslaught took the Jade Giant down in the process, which in its own right is an incredibly mighty feat. But Hulk's valiant offensive eventually gave the heroes of Earth the sliver of opportunity they needed to bring Onslaught down once and for all. But if the heroes had been given even one hand short that day, or if Onslaught had been given even more time to power up, the world would have ended then and there.
Number 3. Scarlet Witch. Perhaps the most famous mutant on this list, given her recent rise to prominence on screen, Wanda Maximoff is indeed one of the most powerful mutants ever born. Though, to be fair, she represents the extremely rare example of science and magic converging around one particular individual. Wanda is also one such mutant, alongside Legion and the upcoming Jean Grey, whose abilities can grow so strong that she quite literally takes on another personality. Though more recently, Wanda has begun to get a firmer grasp on her powers, moments from the past in which she's lost control can give us a good sense of the full capacity of her abilities. This occurred once while Wanda was a member of the West Coast Avengers, and in her unleashed state, she casually brought Wonder Man back to life. "Death is of little consequence to one with my power," she gloated as she effortlessly held the Avengers as helpless captives. "My power now functions at its full potential. I need only think to make the slightest whim reality." But of course, we can't discuss the Scarlet Witch's power without bringing up the magical elephant in the room that is House of M. In the now classic X-Men Avengers crossover event, Wanda's powers are spasming as her fragile grip on reality begins to loosen. In a moment of weakness and fear, her loving brother Quicksilver would suggest that Wanda simply use her powers to create a new reality. If Wolverine's self-regenerating brain hadn't kept his memories intact, it's unlikely the universe would have ever escaped from under the thumb of the Scarlet Witch. She completely remade the entire history of humanity, and she did this without even the need for any help of any kind. Wanda was single-handedly able to instantly and entirely remake the world. In this new reality, Peter Parker was married to Gwen Stacy, Captain America was never frozen in ice, and Clint Barton, like Wonder Man before him, was resurrected from the grave. It took the combined forces of the Avengers and the X-Men to get Wanda to even realize what she had done. But no one could have predicted what Wanda would decide to do next. With 3 simple words, no more mutants, Wanda all but wiped her own species off the face of the planet, crippling mutant kind's progress for years to come and showing everyone exactly why Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful mutants alive. Number 2. Jean Grey. Of course, no list of powerful mutants would be complete without the X-Men's prodigal daughter. The third and final vessel of the Phoenix Force to grace our list, Jean Grey is a legend in the mutant community for a myriad of reasons. Not least of which is the absolute awesome power she wielded in life, both with and without the Phoenix Force at her beck and call. Now, for those unfamiliar, the Phoenix Force is a grand cosmic entity that can latch onto and channel its limitless power through a vessel. Fundamentally, the Phoenix Force is about as close as the Marvel Universe gets to a cosmic god. Jean Grey was perhaps the Phoenix's longest and most consequential host, and while she was under the influence of the cosmic incarnation of Flame and Rebirth, the X-Men known as Marvel Girl boasted some of the highest power levels of all time. A telepath by birth, don't be fooled by Jean's ride-along deity in the passenger seat. She's been performing insane psychic feats since far before she was amplified by the big fiery bird. Many postulate that it was actually Jean's naturally limitless power that drew the Phoenix to her person in the first place, not the other way around. In fact, when Jean Grey came back from the dead to go head-to-head against her Phoenix form, she bested her own cosmic-empowered dark reflection in psychic combat, proving all those who say that Jean is nothing without the Phoenix dead wrong. There are countless examples of the Phoenix exhibiting her immense psychic and telekinetic powers, some much darker than the rest. But perhaps one of the lesser-known moments occurs when Jean Grey meets her younger self while on vacation. In a bizarre series of events that are irrelevant to our inquiry, teenage Jean Grey was once whisked off to the future in order to meet and witness her older self in full bloom. While catching up, the Phoenix-empowered adult Jean decided to take her younger self on something of a joyride. "We're moving faster than I thought possible," thinks the young Jean as she rockets through the stars. "I'm breathing in the void of space." To the Phoenix, it's second nature, requiring no more thought than blinking. She's showing me just how powerful she is. During their interplanetary field trip, the two Jeans run into none other than another cosmic god, Galactus the World Eater. Together, not only is Phoenix able to go head-to-head with Galactus, but young Jean actually manages to get the sucker punch that ends the fight in a gigantic flare of psychic energy. This brief but profound moment proves not just that the Phoenix is a match for Galactus, but that Jean Grey is as well. Number 1. Franklin Richards. Though Franklin Richards' status as a mutant has recently come under some scrutiny, here at Plot Armor Comics, we stand by the young superhero's original designation as a member of Homo Superior, which would make him the most powerful mutant of all time. It's not just that Franklin Richards is an Omega-level mutant, his gifts go much, much further than that. Franklin Richards is one of the most powerful individuals ever to have taken breath in the entire universe, who just happens to be a mutant. When Franklin was still just a boy, he was already a being whom the Celestials felt was on par with themselves. The Celestials are supposed to be the final echelon of power in the material universe, and to have a mutant that stands up to these ancient cosmic deities is quite simply jaw-dropping. More recently, at the close of the Secret Wars event that tore the Marvel multiverse asunder, Franklin's sister Valeria described him as a universal shaper, a dreamer. Franklin, using his reality warping power to create entire universes, literally healed the multiverse by creating countless alternate dimensions full of life and death and heat and chaos, all born entirely from the mind of a young mutant. Thus, the most powerful mutant ever born was able to achieve his full potential, literally creating his own universes from scratch. And no matter where Franklin's life takes him next, he'll always be the mutant that remade reality. In terms of raw power, that's about the tallest order there is. Alright everyone, that does it for this one. Thank you so much for watching today's video on these masterful mutants. Did your favorite make the list? Let us know in the comments. I've been Morse Code, you've been awesome, and on behalf of all of us here at Plot Armor Comics, we hope you have a fantastic day.